It's not the
that
value.
space, excuse me,
Just curious what an educational facility in a hotel gets you. Just out of curiosity.
is it 41 million?
I think as
Yeah,
far as
41.
assessment is
We've got
concerned,
41
I
million.
think your hotels, your office parks, and your retail are on your higher end of your tax
Assessment
Yeah.
scale.
And then it's your manufacturing and your warehousing are
Warehouses.
towards the bottom part of your tax assessment, even though they would provide maybe more jobs.
And then this thing like maps out how much parking is like taken out for the size building and everything
It's-
too?
it's actually-
There's a rough estimate of how much acreage would need for development. That's where this piece comes in that John's gonna talk about now.
Again, the points, when you lay down a point, it calculates, again, based on local averages, how about the area of development space that point would take up, and it subtracts it out of the total parcel space. So you have it basically a development area. What we did for visual purposes to make it a little better, a little easier to read is again, I pulled out some examples from around the town. I don't have any educational facilities, and I only have a smaller hotel. But for instance, I can drag out, right, this is the Harvey building. I can take out the Harvey building and move it over to where I set an industrial facility, okay, and put it in approximately where I would like that manufacturing facility to be. We just added in 200,000 square feet of hotels.
Education right now.
Education.
Another education.
So what I'll do is take, again, I don't have an industrial, so I'll take two similarly sized 100,000 square foot buildings. And I can take this one. This happens to be freezer warehouse. We'll put that there.
Well, can you fit Feezer warehouse behind Harvey? Because I want to shove as much stuff in there as possible. You know, I think put in like a puzzle here, you know? How can you fit another one in?
But just that conversation alone, just see, we can see the power of utilizing this, and, as we sit down and start to really sit down and look at the airport area.
Well,
not
you could
only-
squish it in there.
Not only internally, but maybe invite the property owners in and say, you know what, this is where we see some of the potential, what do you think? And
We could put
can
that
look at
blue one
scenarios.
behind Harvey.
And also, what's important too is this, what we gotta look at is the value, that we're gonna get out of this area, that we want to get out of this area. And, if somebody says that, well, let's load this up with all manufacturing, I said, well, that's all good. It's gonna get us some decent tax revenue, but if we start looking at some corporate offices, whatever, then we're gonna really increase that average pretty good. And when meeting with the property owners, then we can kind of all slowly get on the same page as to what you're marketing towards and what we're marketing towards and what we like to see and what will bear the expense, that we could take on the expense of that $12.3 million road is going to translate it to what it's going to end up being there in the future.
I think for
John?
economic development, what John and Andre and everybody's interested in, I represent some people who want to buy properties at a time. And to get to where John just got costs them a bundle. And if one of the things that Londonderry can sell, you come in here, we have this parcel, and said, geez, I'd like to build, something or other, so big a thing, how much land, what's it gonna do? Well, the person's just saved a lot of money going through this operations. It's a lot of time, a lot of money. Yep, it can be done, or no, it can't. Yes, that'd be a great site, or,
That blue guy.
somebody who's selling on the town can go and say, well, if it isn't up in that corner, it can be over here and it fits in. I think for the economic development, I think it's a magnificent tool.
John,
Could
this
have a
takes,
lot of fun.
We'll have to get something on our website to advertise this, or, we have this
Because
power.
that's, come on in and we will go and help you. I know that when people come in, I've had clients come in, they're looking at a piece of property and now what has to be done, what can be zoned, how much can it be, what's the rough parking ratios and all that stuff before they figure out whether it's gonna fit. They've already spent 20 grand,
this takes into account all of the wetlands and everything else up there?
To a limited degree. Certainly, as we drop in the facilities, it doesn't. We just take what's been developed, lay it in as a pencil sketch.
The only things taken out of this, I believe, are the state mitigation areas that are
Correct.
showing up in the hatch area. The
I was gonna ask, the hatched area is.
Yeah, these hatch areas here.
Yeah, but as,
mitigation
but,
property.
but this is just a initial tool, and then once somebody said, I like that lot, you guys figure it could work there, then you get into the nitty-gritty of what's actually there.
Right. And again, identifying what the total potential is, so that you can market, but to assist with the marketing efforts that maybe the Economic Development Task Force is interested in. But also to help the planning, to identify what the potential for manufacturing is and how that compares to, for instance, for hotels in terms of generating revenue and generating jobs, okay, and generating trips and demand for that road.
Who's past the fact that that one high school?
And that's was really the main purpose by showing you this, is that, I mean, if you remember back, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, we had presented you a build-out analysis of, based on the way land is zoned in Londonderry and the remaining acreage in Londonderry. We gave you a build-out analysis showing that, by, if everything were to be built out in accordance with our regulations, we'll be at, I think it was 35,000 people.
Roughly.
And an X amount of square feet of commercial industrial residence and school-aged children, all that. We're right out, and this is the program we used, and we only see the screenshot of this, the airport area, but if you were to scroll over, there's other places shown in there, and even as we get into the discussions about the workforce housing as to, and through that task force, we identified areas in town where that could go. Well, we can create some scenarios there too, and have the same kind of reporting that is shown on the screen now with regard to that. It's, really, that's one thing I like.
tool
about this
limited
program.
only by your imagination.
That's right, and we have somebody who can run it and figure
That
it out.
that's the other key part of this. I don't think Andre and I have the expertise to do the stuff that John can do with this.
We will just,
Put 22 Summer Drive up and see if a house will fit on that little 1.1.
We can get a Harvey Industries on that, what are you talking about? We just gotta make it tall.
yeah, we'll have to
We
take,
haven't even shown you
And
the
then,
real bells and whistles.
Yeah, and then there are some controls in here. Basically, if you add up too much acreage onto the site, the property turns brown and it tells you, boy, you've maxed it. We've added some controls, so I think that you can only have, I think up to 1 million square feet of space. Other than that, it's,
The sliders for the TDM and things.
right, thanks, Tim. And the other thing is, here's another bells and whistles that we start to get to. I added some assumption values so that you can start to change some of the assumptions and vary and start to truth check and qualify your work. First of all is that I've added a jobs multiplier. So right now, we're assigning jobs at 100% of the average rate, average industry standard. If we decide that that rate is too high, I can set the multiplier down a little bit to 90% or, right now I have it at 80%. When I hit accept, what it will do is reduce the jobs rate. And I forget what we had before, but we have
I'll tell you.
920 right
It
now.
tells you the previous value when you have it up there.
Previous value was 1,000. So we've, by going with a more limited jobs multiplier, we're down by 230 jobs. So you can assume that basically that's the range, the high and low range of jobs that would be created. If we went with a little bit higher or lower density of properties, we can change the floor area ratio. And then the last assumption that I put in is a travel demand management? Transportation demand management tool. So if we go ahead and go with aggressive transportation demand management tools, we might be able to cut the number of trips out of a site by roughly 0.05%. So we can apply that assumption to the process and go over to the trip calculator up top. And we see that we're varying between roughly 198 trips. Okay, so again, that gives you a kind of a high and low range of what to expect.
I like that, because one of the discussions with the FI district is that, well, how about if transportation demand is burdensome? But we can demonstrate that, by advocating for carpooling or, investing in a bus system through there or whatever, and we knock off 5 or maybe even 10% of the trips, then you just lengthen the
Lifespan.
longevity of that roadway by that amount of trips. So we're not looking at the, upgrading the road within your standard 10 to 20 years. We're actually extending it to maybe 20 to 30 years.